Hey everyone, Jeremy Gerard from Mythic Customs here with one of my short customizing tutorial videos. This video is actually not much of a tutorial, it's a top 10, and it's something that I've actually had a number of people ask me to record. They've asked me this question that basically, what are my favorite customs I've done? Now, it's a really hard question to answer because as of this video, considering all the customs I've done for myself, as well as the ones that I've done on commission and to sell, I'm definitely over 500 Mythic Legions customs over the last few years. That's a crazy number when I think about it. And it makes trying to select my favorites really, really difficult. But I've done what I can. I figure it's the end of the year. Everyone does these top 10 kind of countdown things. So this is pretty appropriate for that point. I put together 10 of my favorite customs. Definitely tried to pick a few different genres. I mean, it would have been really easy, for instance, for me to just choose, a lot of the projects I've done with Wolf King Customs. Those are really personal to me because I had a hand in making them. So I could easily have chosen a bunch of those. Like my Samurai Customs that I'm really into, I could have chosen multiple of those. But I tried to have some variety here and really choose 10 that are pretty special to me. I'm actually recording this not only with the camera but on Crowdcast, so I will be able to bring up hopefully some slightly better images of the customs themselves, not only the ones that I have on my table that I'll hold up to the camera. All of these customs are also on my website, www.mythiccustoms.com. So the first one that we'll look at is a custom that I often say is my first real Mythic Legions custom. Like, I definitely did some pop and swap combinations early on when I first got Mythic Legions 1.0 in hand. But the first figure I really consider that I customize is this character here, my blue-skinned genie or Jinn. This is really just a Zazar body with some gold armor from a Gold Knight Legion builder. The feet, I wanted him to have kind of like the curly toed type shoes that you see in a lot of those Arabian Nights and genies and stuff. So these are actually from a Sir Valgard. The head is really the customized piece here. This is from an Urzok figure. Again, Urzok at one point wasn't as difficult to find as he is today. So I painted that blue to match the body, and I gave him this long ponytail that I had found on eBay, and I painted that up, drilled a little hole in his head to add it to create this Jinn type character here. Definitely one of my favorites. Let's see if I can show you some better versions of that. Let's check this out. Let me just bring those up here. So here's a look at him. Again, not a really difficult custom. This is one of the earliest ones I did. So really it was just paint matching that head to the actual torso to get that look. I remember I've told this story a number of times, but when I first heard the name Zazar, I imagined him as a genie type character. So I couldn't get it out of my head. I really wanted a classic genie looking character. And I thought that the orcs looked genie-like, definitely a monstrous type genie, but it worked really well for me. So this is certainly the first one that I would choose to answer that question, which are my favorites. The second one I'll show is a pretty obvious one, and it's what a lot of people know me for these days, and this would be my Kitsune customs. So I mentioned Wolf King Customs. This is the first part that I worked on with Wolf King Customs. I always really wanted a Kitsune Fox Warrior type head. I worked on this with Walter DeMarco of Mass Customs. He sculpted it. Wolf King Customs put it out. Originally, they printed it for me for my personal use, but this project is really what kickstarted my relationship with Len from Wolf King. So from that perspective, it's pretty special. It's the first piece that I actually conceived, from the ground up, from an illustration to working with the artist and everything. So really excited about that. When I first commissioned this, I didn't necessarily imagine it as a samurai. I actually imagined it as a ranger, which is why we did not only this head, but also like a hooded insert that goes inside the Mythic Legions hoods. I imagined it kind of like Robin Hood. like the Disney character of Robin Hood that has the fox head. That's almost how I pictured using it. But around the time that I was working on this, I was reading the classic manga Lone Wolf and Cub, and I got the idea to do these characters, call them Lone Fox and Pup, and by default, this design, this samurai kitsune character became kind of my default use of that head. So let me show you a look on that one. Let's see here. Let me get to them. Here we go. So I mentioned Lone Fox and Pup, based on, or inspired, I should say, by Lone Wolf and Cub. These are the two characters I did. The main character is the one that I just showed you here, the taller samurai that uses kind of like an Elf 2.0 body. Then I did one also on the goblin-sized Thistlethorn body for the Pup, for the smaller type character. So these two are also very, very important to me. I'm showing one of them here. Recently on G-Con, the question was asked a few times if your house was burning down and you had to grab one custom or one figure, actually, they said one toy, what would it be? And I actually mentioned this one because it is really, really personal to me. So definitely this guy had to make the top 10 list. The next one I'll show is a tribute figure. So if you follow my work, you've seen me do a number of tribute type characters over time. I've done, tributes based on Dungeons and Dragons. I've done tributes based on Star Wars characters, tributes based on G.I. Joe, Disney princesses, and on and on. I've done so many of them. It's a lot of fun to do that, to really look at a character design, a costume design, or what have you, and start to think, how would I translate that into Mythic Legions? So I actually have two tributes that made the three tributes technically that made the list. And I'm going to start with this one here. This was my tribute to the bounty hunter from Star Wars, Boba Fett. Boba Fett, I know it's kind of cheesy to say you like Boba Fett, was always my favorite figure as a kid. Not because of what he did on screen, because let's be honest, Boba Fett in the original trilogy didn't do a whole lot. But watching those movies was, for me as a kid, not as important as playing with the toys. I played with the toys every single day, and Boba Fett was always my favorite. He had the helmet, he had the rocket pack. He just was a cool looking character. So I always really liked Boba Fett. When I started doing these tributes, I remember actually seeing someone on the old Four Horsemen board do kind of a digibash where they took an illustration of some of the mythic parts, including this Gorgo Aetherblade style helmet. They painted it up like a Boba Fett, or in this case, they did a digibash in like Photoshop like a Boba Fett. I always thought that was a cool idea, so I got around finally a couple years ago to doing this custom here. Really dig this figure. I actually did an update on him recently where I styled him more like the new look Boba Fett from The Mandalorian, kind of with like the black skirt and the black coloring, the armor not being so beat up and scuffed, but being more flat colors. But that one still is definitely my favorite of the group. And let me show that right now here so you can check out a better shot of him. So there's one there, and that's kind of a close-up where you can see his face. One of the things I tried to throw a lot of details in this particular figure, like little tools at his belt and around his legs. And additionally, that kind of iconic skull design that Boba Fett has on his shoulder pad, I didn't want to paint that on, so I thought it would be fun to actually think about that in 3 dimensions, to actually use a Mythic Legion skull. This is one of the little skull pieces that comes on like the Goblin Legion Builder's axe. I glue some horns into it to kind of recreate that horn skull look that you see on Boba Fett's shoulder. Let me look at another version of that. I've got actually a full body photo here as well. Fett deserves seeing both. So there we go. There's another version of Fett. And again, lots of little details. I really like the fact that I used one of the Mythic Legion swords with a red handle on his back, and it kind of sticks straight up, kind of replicating the missile that Boba Fett would have coming up, rising above his head on his back. I thought that was a nice little touch. He's definitely in my top 10. Next tribute figure, I mentioned that I did one from Star Wars and so forth. And I mentioned G.I. Joe. So there was a point where I wanted to rethink some of the, iconic G.I. Joe characters in Mythic Legions. Instead of G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, I kind of jokingly referred to it as Sir Joseph, a real Mythonian hero. And I rethought how characters like Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow, Duke and Cobra Commander and so forth would look in Mythic Legions. My favorite from that group was my version of the Master of Disguise, Zartan. And this came together really well for me for a few reasons. Number one, I wanted to make him a different kind of race. I didn't just want to make him, say, an elf or a human. In Dungeons and Dragons lore, which is one of the biggest influences on my collection and my customizing, there's a race called a changeling. They actually do look very elf-like, but they've got this like pale, almost like ashen style skin. They're super ostracized because they can essentially mimic any other kind of character and race. So people are really wary of them. I thought that's a great substitute for Zartan. So I did this. I mean, it's largely parts from 2.0 elf style figures that are painted the iconic silver and purple Zartan colors. But the big part here is obviously the face. That's a big piece. That iconic face paint that you have around Zartan's face being inside that hood. He's got the bow and arrow because Zartan is, an archer and everything. So I thought that worked really well, both representing the Zartan character, but also as a really cool Mythic Legions figure. It fits in really well with Mythic Legions. So let's look at that. Got a few of them that I can show. Starting right here. So here's Zartan, again, a better photo of him where you can see he's got, in this picture, he's got the bow slung on his back. But you can see what I did here was try to, the actual Zartan character has kind of an armored upper body, and he's actually got a bare midriff in the original design. I didn't want to do that, even though I could have. We have bare midriff pieces for Mythic Legions. Instead, I actually used some of the lower armored part on the elf figure. Use that loin piece, cut it up a little bit to give it a little bit of a different look. But again, the big thing here is the face paint that we did here. And I did do an alternate look for him as well, because I wanted to paint, not only the hooded helmet, but the hooded face, I should say. I also wanted to paint what he would look like without the hood. So I took a regular elf builder head and I painted that up with that same ashen type color, the white eyes, and that same face paint. So Zartan is another really important one. I actually debuted this a few years ago at Legions Con in New Jersey. This was one of the figures that I brought with me, and attendees that stopped by my table at that event got to see this for the first time. Another figure that I had at Legions Con, because it's been one of my favorites, it's technically an inspired figure, technically a tribute figure. I did it as part of my Disney Princesses kind of line, but it looks very, very unique. Ironically, it's the only female that made my top 10, which is not surprising. I don't do as many female customs as I do male, or, not only humanoid. Obviously, I do a lot of animal type customs. I do a lot of monsters and stuff, but I don't do as many females. This is one that I did that I absolutely love. This was essentially originally my tribute to the Disney princess of Tiana from Princess and the Frog. I called her Princess of the Frogs. And what I kind of did here was combine characters. Obviously, Tiana in that movie is the main hero. But then the bad guy is kind of the voodoo priest, the voodoo kind of guy. I really combined both those characters here to make Tiana into a voodoo type character. The base figure of this is obviously a Hera Serpent Spire. What I did, she already has that very voodoo-like look, but I really accentuated it by painting the skull face paint on her mask. I'm adding these skulls here. I actually messed with her here, and this skull and here piece is from a Queen Urxa figure. So I added a lot of that, added this skirt and this cape from Lord of the Rings, painted them brown to really give her that look that I was going for, as if she was a character, you know, kind of that lived in the swamps. And I call her Princess of the Frogs because I imagined her having an army of like bog goblins at her disposal. So let's look at her, give some better pictures of what she looks like. Definitely one of my favorites. She's one that a lot of people will ask me about, whether or not she's available or what the recipe is. And there we have her here. I took her out actually to a local state park next to me. They're kind of swampy type areas. Took some photos of her in a nice swampy area that I thought she would look really good. And again, the body is just a Hera Serpent Spire. She already had some of that face paint or some of that paint on her torso. So just adding a little bit of paint to her head, replacing that snake-like crown piece and the hair. It really gave me the look that I was going for my Tiana Princess of the Frogs custom. Definitely another one in my top 10. So let's look at what we got left here. So this is one that I actually posted recently for the holidays. I went back and posted a bunch of my holiday themed type figures, and this guy made the cut. This is a character called Mozoko the Winter King. So this character comes from a few different places. He's certainly from Russian folklore. There's Russian fairy tales that talk of this Winter King. But there's also a book series. The book series, a lot of people call it Baron the Nightingale, which is the name of the first book. It's actually called the Midwinter Trilogy. It's by an author named Catherine Arden. Wonderful, wonderful story, really deep in Russian folklore, a lot of like Fae type stuff. This character here, this Lord of Winter, is a Fae godlike character. I loved the book, really wanted to create a version of him for my display. So I did so using pieces from a Sir Ignatius figure where I repainted the gold silver, a lower skirt piece from a Lord of the Rings Celeborn figure, a chest piece from a Sir Gideon, lots of different parts here. Definitely the head is actually a piece that was painted by Kurt Daniels. It's actually a Sting head, the wrestler. I was amazed when I saw this head because I've seen the original figure, and I never realized what great sculptural details there were in that face. But once I saw him repainted differently, I loved it. I actually commissioned this one from him specifically a few years ago with the white hair, with the black eyes, to create my Mozoko the Winter King. Let's get a better look at him. And he is right here. So there we go. Took him outside for a nice snowy day a few years ago. It was a great day for a photo shoot for a character that is supposed to be the Lord of Winter. Again, lots of silvers on him. The Sir Ignatius figure that I started with has that pearlescent armor to begin with. That was already a great base figure to use. So adding in the different silver accents. The helmet is actually from Sir Ignatius as well. Once again, painted those silver accents and gave him some horns that I painted silver as well. Those deer antler type horns. Okay, so we're getting to the second half here. We're actually in the second half right now, and it's probably time we should look at a goblin. So just like I said at the start, I probably could have filled my top 10 with all samurais or all figures I've worked on with Wolfgang. I could have done it with goblins as well. Goblins is a type of character that I went really, really deep in. As soon as 2.0 hit, I loved the goblins. I loved their personality, so I did a ton of different goblin characters. But my favorite from that group has to be this guy here, Gunzo. So Gunzo was my goblin tinker with these crazy mechanical looking wings on his back. I've said this before, but I imagine the Mythic Legions goblins being more Henson than Tolkien. I imagine them being very Muppet-like, whether it's from Labyrinth or the Muppet Show. That's what I imagine. They're equal parts kind of, chaos and comedy, basically. So with that in mind, I took a snag head and I removed the cap on it. I cut it down a little bit and I used this leather aviator style cap and goggles that were from a Palisades Muppets Gonzo figure. And actually this character's name is Gunzo as a tribute to Gonzo. Did that, gave him this kind of flight pack. Obviously the big piece here are these wings. These wings are from an old Hasbro line called Zevos. Really cool kind of socket construction figure type line that I liked a lot. This was from a character called Tomb Wraith. Repainted those because I thought that they really had that cool mechanical type look that I wanted for my aviator dwarf here. So let's take a better look at this character and how he lays out. And he's a very, very popular one. People, when I talk to people, this is one that they tend to like a lot. He's one as well that I took. I recently, a few months ago, shot some footage for the documentary series Action Figure Adventure. This was one of the characters that I brought with me. I actually got filmed at Four Horsemen Studios. That's where I did my interviews, and I took a handful of customs with me, including this character and the Boba Fett tribute that I showed earlier. Both of those are going to be actually shown in the documentary. So this guy's that much more special to me as well because he is a movie star. Gunzo gets to be a movie star. Really, really love this guy. A lot of fun. And again, he typifies the comedy side, the frantic side, chaotic side of the goblins for me, definitely in my top 10. Next, we're going to look at a more simple custom. So customs don't have to have tons of paintwork on them. They don't have to use tons of third-party parts or custom sculpted pieces. Some of my favorite customs are ones that are just a smart use of parts. And you know, little, what do you call them, kit bashes, pop and swaps, those are really how I started and how so many customizers begin. I think there's a lot to be said for a smart use of existing parts. One of my favorite ones that I've ever done is this character here, who I call Sir Marley. So this is my tribute to Jacob Marley from A Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol is one of my favorite overall stories. So I really, really dug creating a ghostly character for him. When I did this character, I mean, this obviously uses the Hagnon body as the base. What I did when I saw Hagnon, I imagined him, you know, he's normally fully transparent. He's fully ghostly. I thought, how cool would it be if instead of being a pure ghost, he actually had armor on and he was more like an animated suit of armor, like he was a ghost inside this armor. So that's what I did here. I used the armor pieces from an Ilgar figure with all of these different chains. Obviously, he's a tribute to Jacob Marley, so he's got all these chains. Really dug how this figure came out, but there's no paint on this at all. All this is a simple pop and swap combining a handful of clear pieces from Hagnon with some armor pieces from an Ilgar figure in all of those Hagnon chains. Really easy to do. One of my favorites, and certainly something that I hold up there as an example of you being able to create cool customs without needing to do a lot of painting or anything like that. So let's take a look at what he looks like here. Just going to find him. And here we are. So this is a shot that I took that I think, you know, really typifies this character. I've seen lots of people take wonderful photography with Hagnon by, you know, kind of shooting and projecting light from behind him. He really picks it up. It's a great figure, great head sculpture. I've actually used this same head sculpture in a number of customs where I fully painted it. And once you see the details from that head sculpture really pop, it is a wonderful piece. And it was, once again, the perfect parts to create my tribute to Jacob Marley, which I call Sir Marley. So last few here, I want to show this one. Before Mythic Legions, we had the Gothotropolis birds. These figures, even though I had collected Four Horsemen Studios for many, many years, back even before they were Four Horsemen, when they were at McFarlane Studios, and when they started their own studio and they did the fantastic exclusive with Seventh Kingdom, I collected all of those. But there was a period of time where they weren't releasing a lot of new parts. And really, when they got back into it was when they did the Kickstarter a number of years ago for the Gothotropolis birds, or the Gothotropolis ravens. The Blue Jay was not part of that Kickstarter. It actually came out later as part of the Etheron's Dozen wave. It was in a Mythic Legions branded box, but it obviously uses all of the bird parts that were part of that Gothotropolis wave. They did an amazing amount of figures, amazing amount of bird characters in those waves. Lots of different species or varieties, ravens, eagles, vulture, you name it, pelican, parrot, a whole bunch of them. The Blue Jay was one of them. One thing I always thought about the birds is, as cool as they were really just different painted bodies with different heads. The weapons that came on them were pretty basic. They look great, but I think they are a wonderful base for customs. And not a lot of people do customs. So what I did with the Blue Jay here was a few things. First off, this does use the large wings that were available for these figures. I always liked how they looked with the large wings. I actually added some paint details to these wings. Normally they're just a flat blue. I added a bunch of paint details to really increase the colors on that, to bring some of the colors that you see in the bird's feathers onto the wings as well. But the other thing I did was I made him a bandit, the Blue Jay Bandit. And that was based on a book series that I had read called Inkheart. So in that Inkheart series, there is a character that becomes a bandit called the Blue Jay. And he's not actually a Blue Jay, but I took that name, the Blue Jay Bandit, and I made a literal bandit Blue Jay out of it. Really, really like how this looks. And I think he deserves a place in the top 10 just because of how influential I think those bird figures actually were. So let me show you what that character looks like here. And there you go. That's the Blue Jay. And you can see that's actually a nice shot where his wings are spread a little bit. Once again, the wings, if you use the bigger wings that plug into the back of these birds, it gives them such a more imposing type of look. I really dig how all of those figures display, not even customized, but just those bird figures with the wings. I've always thought they look really, really great. That brings us to our last one. And for the last one, it was really, really hard. Actually, if you asked me this question to pick my top 10, anytime you asked me, it would probably change. There would be some, certainly like the Jin and the Kitsune and probably the Boba Fett, that would certainly be in the top 10, no matter when you ask me. There are others that may swap in and out depending on the day. I did want to show this one last one, though. This is an ogre scale figure. Obviously, the ogres are a different size, different scale. I've done a number of them. This is one that I really liked. And if I think about my custom ogres, this is probably my favorite one. This big hill, half giant type character is just a great, really well realized character, in my opinion. And a large part of that is because of the wonderful custom head and this giant, wonderful custom belly from Planetary Dog Toys. The head itself has kind of a fun smile type look to him. There's not a lot of characters in Mythic Legions. There's none in production that have kind of a happy type look. So I really found that fun. It created a really fun looking character for me. I also added some fur to his boots, some different legs, so I should say some different feet here that come from a 1/6 scale Thorin Oakenshield Hobbit figure. Again, all in all, between the face, the big torso here, the weapons that I added to him, there's a lot of stuff to create this character. Well-realized figure that looks really wonderful on my shelf. And I'll show you that. I'll show you a few pictures of him right now for the last of the top 10. He rounds it out here. So let's look at this. So there we go. That's the Hill Giant kind of in all his glory. Really fun build. The base on this is a Balthar, the tower figure that I paint matched the torso and the head to. A lot of people ask me how I do paint matching. It is really trial and error for me. I'm not one that has these detailed recipes. I'm one that just kind of mixes paints and hopes for the best. I'll show you a better photo of that that character's head here. Oh, actually, this is a better photo of the side from him, so you can see kind of that belly, that big torso or fat ogre scale torso from Planetary Dog Toys really adds so much, I think, to the overall design. Let's see, I'll bring up that head close up right now. Let me just find that. Okay, I think it's right here. Nope, looks like that's the same thing. So it looks like I don't have a photo of the big head. Let me see. I'm sure I can bring it up. Okay, there we go. And figures get all the way through the video, and that's when you start to have technical problems. But there we go. That's a close-up of the head, so you can see wonderful sculpt that Saba and Julie from Planetary Dog Toys did. So that big bulbous nose, got a lot of textures in there, wonderful beard, really added so much to this character, gives it so much personality. It was an absolute joy to paint. And there you have it. That answers the question, what are my favorite customs I've done? Once again, depending when you ask me, I may swap a couple of them out, but as of today, these are the ones that I would pick. It's crazy when you look at this list too, because as much as I love these, there's no dwarves in this table, there's no vampires, there's no orcs. I've done a ton of those figures. There's only one animal character, well, I guess two if you count the blue jay. I've done a ton of critter type customs, yet they didn't, all make the list here. That's one of the things I love about Mythic Legions customizing as a hobby, the fact that you can create this kind of variety, that you can explore so many different avenues. It's great. It's a lot of fun. What are your top 10? Think about that. Look at your shelves. Look at your customs, the ones you've done. Which are your favorites? Why do you like them as much as you do? Is it because they created some different variety for you? Is it stuff that reminds you of a certain character you're really into or a project that you were really, really close to? Those are all some of the reasons why I really like these. That's my top 10. Thank you very much for watching. I know this was a little bit of a longer video than normal, but we're ending the year with this. Thank you all very much. Here's to a wonderful 2021. Thank you all for supporting this channel. Let me know if you dug this video or videos like these in the comments. Give the video a like. Certainly, if you're not subscribed already, consider doing so. And I will talk to you soon. Happy New Year, everyone.